mop handle, mop head. So make sure it's nice and loose. You don't want it to be too tight, because once it's too tight, you're gonna have a tough time putting it in. So right now, it's pretty loose and unlocked. Slide it through. If anything, I like to keep my hand kind of like this and put it over me to make sure none of these bristles right here are overlapping each other. So most likely, so it slides in perfectly into the center. Lock it through. Most likely, I like to read this little middle line right here to know that that's my center that should be kept on when I'm locking it through. Twist it in. Make sure it's nice and tight. And now, what I have noticed is fresh mop head, put it in, let it soak. And now once I pull it out, dry it off. And now with the weight of it, if you notice, tighten it back through, you're gonna feel how loose and slack it is. That's because when you put it on, it was dry. Now that you soaked it through, the weight of it is most likely gonna drag it down a little bit to where it's not gonna be as tight as the moment you put it on. So always double check to make sure it's nice and tight. Now, two different ways. Of course, you can do a standard, very wet mop. Barely drying it through. Of course, it's gonna be very wet. That's only if needed for an extra wet mop. Also, if it doesn't look too bad, your flooring doesn't need too much work with mopping, of course, make sure you thoroughly dry it very well. Sometimes, if you need to twist it, go ahead and make sure everything is soaked down. Make sure you move your mop bucket away from you just so you don't trip over it. And now in this case, entryway. If your final move is to be mopping at the very end of the night of your account, that's the only thing you have to do. Most likely you're going to want to mop from the back all the way back to the entrance where you walked into from. Why? Because if you start from the entrance, mop your way back through to the end, you're going to end up probably stepping over your mopping and whatnot, leaving footprints. So if anything, in this case, exit is behind me. And of course, getting all of these footprints, whatever that's stuck on there, dirt, mud, whatever it is, getting it through. Now, always make sure that you're mopping kind of in a figure eight, basically, side to side, so you're hitting all angles. If you were to strictly just mop forward, yes, it does work, but not as efficient, because if you really think about it, you're basically pushing everything back forward. So in this case, and also against the baseboards, most likely not the best idea, because same thing as dust mopping, you're basically pushing all the dirt back into the baseboards. So plenty of ways to do this. Some people like to do the box method, right against it, curl themselves through, you have yourself a perimeter, and just basically mopping through your box. Definitely works, very efficient if needed. But basically, as you just keep on, doing a figure eight, you're hitting all angles. If you're basically doing it like this, if you look at my posture, I'm bending over more, therefore, you're gonna end up hurting your back. So of course, when mopping, always make sure it's parallel to you. Therefore, no reason to hurt yourself, ruin your posture, or whatever it is. Now, of course, I like to make sure that I'm mopping from exit to entry, because I can make sure that I'm not stepping on anything that's needed. Always make sure you're always, paying attention to behind you as well, your surroundings. And that is exactly how you should mop. Now, since we have this little small area right here, this right here would definitely work for the whole box method. Basically, keep it on whatever side you're dominant in, or whatever side you feel comfortable with. For me, I'm right-handed, but I like to keep it on my left just because it just makes me feel very comfortable. Of course, straight through, cut down. Now basically I just created a perimeter. Now all I have to do is worry about the center. You're hitting all angles of it. Now, of course, if you have any carpets or whatnot, you're always going to make sure that's thoroughly vacuumed before removing said carpet. So in this case, most likely remove all of this so you have an open area. You don't want to mop around it. You mop around it, yes, you're most likely getting the edges of it. But if you really think about it, depending how wet your mop is, that lingering water from mopping over the perimeter is most likely going to seep under here and create these type of lines and whatnot. As you can tell, it's a discoloration. This is obviously thoroughly mopped. Most likely these edges are not, meaning that you need to make sure that you're removing your carpet. So in that case, make sure all carpets and mats are removed. So you have your open space, you don't have to worry about going around it. And basically, just make sure you're hitting all angles of it. Now, the only time that you should probably push, if needed, is if you're trying to scratch something off that's just stuck on there, mostly lingering food, maybe some lingering scraps of, fruits or whatnot, depending where you're at. If anything, I found it very effective to just basically use the corner edge of the mop. So therefore, give it a good little, get a little bit of pressure. It will basically help you scrub all that residual stuff that you cannot get just from doing your figure eights and whatnot. And to prevent from pushing it back through, just go over it one more time at an angle with a figure eight to make sure everything is being picked up and properly mopped. All right. This isn't even my account to clean. I'm basically cleaning it right now. Now, put this back on an example. To retract, set desk mop head, basically loosen it back up. You will definitely know when it's loosening up because you can basically spin it like a coin. Very simple. Push down on this handle part right here. Most likely you can tell there's a gap right there. It's able for you to push through. Push through, pull out, it's unlocked. You have your mop head disassembled. Now, of course, I always tell people to make sure you're wearing gloves when you're disassembling your mop or whatnot, because you don't know exactly what could have been mopped up. You don't want your hands to be all sticky and dirty or whatnot, because most likely this now is a dirty mop head. So if anything, always make sure you're wearing gloves. If you don't have any accessible to gloves, if anything, you can always keep it assembled, and before loosening it, walk to your dust mop or your mop bucket and basically hold it over your dust mop or mop bucket and basically retract it from there. Therefore, you don't have to worry about touching anything. Or if you have a bag, go ahead and retract it into the bag as well to just prevent your hands from getting too dirty or gunky or whatever it is. And now, handle is back. Just go ahead, dump out water and disassemble your mop bucket. Very simple, the same as if you were to put it together. Pull out your dryer first. I like to hold it over said mop bucket. Just make sure that anything that has to be dripped off is dripping directly into the old dirty water. Go ahead and put that to the side. And then now, at this point, mop bucket water looks fairly very clean. You would know exactly when you have to switch it out, exchange, water, whatnot, when you honestly cannot see the very bottom anymore. At this point, still very clean water. I can see the yellow, so it's very good. And of course, make sure you dump it in to your drain or wherever you want to dump it into. Now at this point, like I said, it's the residual little pieces of dirt and sand and whatnot. Basically give it a nice little rinse off, make sure everything, all that stuff that could be left over overnight is all gone. I give it a little swish. And to make sure that you're getting everything out, make sure you're holding exactly upside down to make sure all those lingering rocks are all gone. And now if there is anything left, of course, you can go ahead and need a rag. Of course, if you have a rag or whatnot, make sure you wipe it down if needed. If it's stuck on there, like I said, try your very best to get it all off. Most likely in this case, you need a new mop bucket. But at this point, once you're done mopping, make sure you put everything back exactly however it needs to be situated at. Some accounts will have it strictly still assembled, put it to the side next to the drain. Some accounts will most likely want you to disassemble it, put your dryer back into the mop bucket itself, just to make sure it's out of the way. Now in this case, since we have a dirty mop head, make sure that you have a good liner, very clean one. Open it back up. And now let's say I drained all my water, dumped on my mop bucket, and my mop head is right there. Now let's say if you don't have any gloves, use this to act as a glove. Grab it, fold it over, no dirty hands. And you have your dirty mop bucket or mop head into a very nice clean bag. So there, go ahead and put into your dirty supplies or whatever it is that you use for your laundries and whatnot. And yep, just like that. And now again, when putting away your supplies, in this case, this isn't too dirty, but most likely when I first used it, all of this was not there. So now that I did dust mop properly, you can definitely tell if you got everything by seeing exactly how dirty it looks. Now, of course, make sure all supplies are put back properly. Make sure your vacuum is in the very first to give you weight. And now, I like to put the dust mop in first, fold it over if needed to. I only recommend folding it over, leaving your dust mop head on. If, like I said, if this is your only account, there's no reason why you should take it off until you know when you have to get a new dust mop head on. In this case, there's only one account that only needs it, so this was a fresh one that I used. So it can still be good for another night use. Most likely, I would like to switch those out probably every single 2 nights, depending how clean or how heavy of a dust mopping was. It was a very heavy dust mopping night. Most likely, you're gonna switch that out the very same night. But in this case, it was very light, nothing too crazy. Therefore, that's still good for another night. Now, of course, putting your mop handle back, make sure that the mop handle clutch itself is pointing up. Same thing with your broom. Make sure your bristles are not pointing down into your bucket, because at that point, you're gonna basically singe all the bristles and whatnot. So most likely, always wanna make sure that everything is standing head up, handle down, and most likely that should be it. Now, of course, there will be other accounts that don't require you to put all your supplies in your bucket. Most likely they'll have, a whole handle of clips to where at some point you can clip everything on if needed. Of course, at the same time, if there is clips, make sure everything's head up, not head down. But in this case, this account, you put everything all in our barrel. Now, like I said, again, make sure none of your dust mops are facing towards the wall or wherever it's at, because at that point, whatever residual dust is on there, dirt, whatnot, is most likely going to start staining up or dirting up that corner wall. So always make sure it's facing up towards you, against the wall, to prevent any type of dirting on the corners. All right. Now, of course, dustpan. Of course, you can always connect it if needed, and if you do connect it, basically use as a little shelter for your mop or your broom heads. Make sure it's not going against anything. Make sure none of these bristles are being, damaged or whatnot. And if that's not the case, most likely, if you have your scatter bucket right here, you can always put it shovel nose down. You don't want to put it up, because if you do, honestly, you don't know if you can damage the handle, knowing whatever's in there. So I like to keep it just like that. Of course, don't push it all the way in. Don't shove it in there, because at that point, you're probably going to end up damaging the shovel itself. So it's just basically just lay it on there, just like that. Now, of course, with your dirties, since this was a dirty mop head, dust mop, we can definitely just put it back into with the dirties. Same thing, you can also put your dirty rags and whatnot onto your dirties, and most likely this use is done. Therefore, make sure you're washing everything. Make sure you have new supplies, fresh, clean supplies for the next following night. Other than that, everything is good. Now, of course, if you had to remove any mats for said mopping, of course, let it dry. If it's damp, wet, whatever, you don't want to put the mat immediately back on, because therefore, who knows how dirty this bottom surface is. At that point, that can cause more work for you to be mopping at the end of the night or said following night. Make sure everything's all dry. Place your mat back. Always make sure you're looking at certain angles of the flooring. Make sure you didn't miss anything. And then, yeah, that's exactly it. Should be good.